Geeks and geekettes, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, comic book fans from the world over, gats and gittens, senors and senoritas, welcome to another thrill-packed, information-loaded episode of Ask Chuck Dixon, where you get to ask me about what I do for a living. And what I do for a living is I write comic books. Let's not waste any more time. Let's get right into the questions. Tim Gilpin. Recently, a fan publicly confronted George R.R. Martin over the long-delayed sixth book in the Song of Fire and Ice series. The fan told Martin he needed to write the book before he died and choose another writer to finish the series if necessary. Despite the fan's crass presumption, he has valid points. Martin has promised for years he would write the next book, but instead he's worked on other projects. Do you have any opinion on the confrontation between Martin and the fan? Generally, what do you believe writers owe fans and fans should expect from writers? I don't know anything about the George R.R. Martin books. I never watched Game of Thrones. I never read any of the books. I'm not a huge fan of fantasy by the pound, but lots of people are, and God bless all of you if that's the genre that you enjoy. I never understood why he didn't finish it. There's maybe he made so much money, although I know what writers make in residuals off of these things, and he probably didn't make anywhere near the amount of money that we think he made. But maybe money made him lazy. To me, money, if I get like a windfall, if anything, it makes me want to do more. Especially on creator-owned stuff. You know, money buys you time as a writer. It doesn't take away your time. I mean, let's face it, George R.R. Martin isn't showing up on all the TV talk shows and all the rest. He doesn't have a hectic, busy schedule of a Hollywood celebrity. So I don't understand. But every writer's different. I don't know what's going on in this guy's life that he just doesn't finish it. I mean, doesn't he? It's like having homework all the time. And maybe he's one of those guys. I mean, I was the kind of kid that on the first day of Christmas vacation, I did my vacation assignment. Just so I wouldn't have to think about it over the Christmas holidays. Yeah, you probably all hate me right now. But I did. It's like, you have to do these multiplication tables. You have to write this essay. I come right home from school that day and sit down and do that. So I didn't have to think about it. Because the last thing I wanted to think about during my Christmas vacation was school. And I'm the same way now. If I have an unfinished assignment, it's always in my head. It's always in my head. I mean, I'm mostly doing creator-owned, self-starting projects. Right now I've got a Western novel that I want to finish. I don't have to finish it. I want to finish it, but I kept having all these different projects thrown at me, and it kept interrupting. And it's been like 6 months since I've even taken a look at this thing, literally. This afternoon, I'm going to reread it to familiarize myself and get out my cheat sheets and notes so I can get back and finish. I know how I want to end it. That's the most frustrating thing. I know how I want to end it. I have this awesome scene at the end, or in my mind, it's an awesome scene, to my way of thinking. So what's it like for George R.R. Martin to have probably the most famous unfinished assignment in the world currently sitting in the back of his mind? You wake up in the morning thinking of, does he wake up in the morning thinking about it? Does he go to bed at night thinking about it? I can't imagine it. I mean, I recently heard from a penciler that he had no work. That the next thing we were going to do was delayed for a while. So he had nothing. Well, hang on, buddy. And I had pages for a new project for us to do to him the next day. Because just the idea of a penciler having nothing to do. I mean, it was like a brand new assignment. And I guess that's just the way I roll. George R.R. Martin apparently can just forget the world. To do what? Just finish it. Is he intimidated by his own work? It's fantasy by the pound. How intimidating can you be? You must have had an end in mind. There must be an end that the fans are anticipating. Kill off a few more characters and then one is alive at the end. I mean, how hard can this be? So that's the only thing I know about Game of Thrones is that all the main characters die off like teenagers at Crystal Lake, with some kind of regularity. So, what are you going to do? Now, what do we owe fans as a writer? Well, I did a series called Bad Times. It was a time travel series. And I was defying a ban from my wife, never to write time travel again. Because she said it turns me schizo. And she might be right. She might be right. She says it changes my behavior. And to her credit, if I try to write time travel, she knows. I mean, if I started a Bad Times novel in the morning, by that evening, she would go, "You're writing time travel." She could see a change in me. Weird, right? I mean, I don't see it. She sees it. But she did see it, and it was accurate every single time. So, but I wanted to write these, and I wanted to write a lot of them, sadly. But I only wrote 6. And I bowled through, no, not bowled through, I enjoyed writing them, but I suffered the slings and arrows from my wife in order to write all 6 books. And I wanted to get to book 6 for the main reason was I wanted to introduce dinosaurs. I wanted to have these guys go up again, go into the Cretaceous period, which they did in the final book, The Pirates of the Cretaceous. And also I wanted to wrap things up to a degree. Now, if you've read the Bad Time series, you go, Chuck, you really didn't wrap everything up. No, I did. I mean, we can assume that all of the characters are going to get together again. They are all on the same plane. They're all in the same rough time period. They're all in the same place, on the same world, in the same reality. So we can assume, and most of them made it through. So we can assume you can tell your own stories from here on. But I didn't leave you with a cliffhanger by any means. I wrapped things up 1970s movie style. There's a lot more story to be told, obviously, but it's not necessary. I mean, the thing came to a conclusion. But I felt I owed that to the fans. And I hear from fans all the time, could you go back and write this? Could you go back and write that? And, yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to go do some more Airboy. I'd love to do some more Winter World. It's just, somebody's got to pay the bills. I mean, I do a lot of self-financed creator-owned stuff, but, I'm not a corporation. I have limited funds. I can't put out a whole line of comics by myself. I can't simply, I have an artist right now I'm dying to work with, and I'm dying to work with on a project, but I simply don't have the funds to get it going. So there you have it. I think obviously writers owe something to their audience. Just as actors, like Charles Bronson always famously said, what he owed to his audience was to stay in shape. Mostly when he was bitching about Marlon Brando. But he said, these people come to see you because you look good. Your job is to look good. Keep looking good. And when a guy like Charles Bronson tells you got to look good, you need to listen. Definitely. Talk about fan service, but fan service is a real thing. I've got to, you people. I hate talking about my readership. I certainly hate saying my fans, but my audience, for all the different particular things that I write, I want to give them more. It isn't always possible. But then I wanted to present, new projects as well. I think, Guns of Mars for a lot of people came out of nowhere. Even though I've been working on it for a really, really long time, and I think I surprised people that weren't expecting something like that from me. And that's kind of fun on my side. Not really. It kind of is fan service. It's not fan service. I didn't give you what you asked for, but I did give you something you didn't expect and hopefully will enjoy. So yeah, I don't know how George R. R. Martin sleeps at night. Literally, I don't know how he sleeps at night. My mind would be going, that I gotta get this thing done. Does he think of scenes? I do. Is he thinking of scenes for this book but just not writing them down? I don't get it. I don't get it. Mike Partika, I hope I'm saying your name right. Considering that you're such a prolific author, how often are you in situations where you're presented with your own work, whether a single issue or even a whole title, and honestly you have to ask yourself, did I write that? Man, you must be spying on me. Because just the other day, I was at my storage unit going through boxes of comics, basically boxes of comics I wrote, and I came across this, Battleship Galaxies from IDW. I don't remember writing this at all. I don't remember anything about it. I leafed through it and I couldn't remember anything about it. I mean, that's weird. It doesn't always happen to me. I also ran across a little mini comic I did for the TV series The Last Ship. And I did remember that. I had forgotten it momentarily. I was surprised. Oh, yeah, I remember this. And I remember the storyline. I remember the conversations with the people who published it. Because there was some back and forth about what I could and could not do. I had to do some rewriting. So I remember all of that. But I do not remember a darn thing about this. Weird. Now, like I said earlier, I wrote a Western, Snakehand. Well, I've written a number of Westerns, but this was the first one I wrote with Mr. John Neal. And like I said, I'm writing a third one in this series, and I've got to go back because I don't remember everything about what I wrote. I know the general story, but I got to remember the character names. I got to remember who's still alive at this point in the story, and basically, remember my place, remember where I left off, because I know where I want to go with it. And now, do I look at stuff from the past? Is that the next question? Yeah, that is the next question. I'm skipping ahead here. How did that happen? Anyway, you're getting a twin spin, buddy. You're getting a twin spin. So let's do a little homework here, or a little housekeeping. Mike Partika, again, follow-up question. Do you ever go back and read your own work and find yourself surprised by something in it you'd forgotten and wonder where you came up with a particular element? Or is it usually easy to recall the thought process that led you to include an element? Yeah, okay. This is why I put the Batman Pirate thing up. I was looking through comics. Oh my gosh, you must have been spying on me. I was looking through comics and I came across the second Batman Pirate story I did with Kike Alcatena, and it was in one of those Batman anthology books. It was a 10-page story, all splash pages, all told in a pirate sea shanty that's in a scroll down one side of the page. And I was rereading it because I love looking at the Alcatena artwork. It's absolutely gorgeous. And so I'm rereading it and thinking, wow, how the hell did I come up with this? How did I ever think of this idea? And how did I write 10 pages of a sea shanty, of doggerel poetry? But doggerel poetry, of course, is crude, not especially well-written poetry, but, even so, I still had to keep the tone consistent and use the language of the period. And it's like, wow, I don't remember how I did that. And then to once again talk about Snakehand and writing Westerns, when I reread this Western this afternoon that I wrote over the last couple of years, I know I'm going to be surprised at, wow, I didn't know I know this terminology. I didn't, I'm surprised by what I knew then, and do I still know that? And then again, back to the storage area, I started looking at this run on G.I. Joe that I did that involved a Cobra submarine cruiser. And I remembered before I started looking through it that I I remember proposing it. I remember pitching it. I remember writing it because I was fascinated. I know I bring this up. I bore everybody. I was fascinated by the submarine cruisers the French had in the 1930s. These enormous submarines, just huge, like undersea battleships. And I was fascinated by them. And when I got the G.I. Joe assignment, I said, I am absolutely going to do a submarine cruiser story where Cobra has this massively huge submarine. And in the story, the Joes infiltrate the submarine. They have like this lamprey vehicle, and they get in through a hatch, and they're going to disable this thing because it's there to plant an atomic weapon on the floor of the ocean to cause some sort of seismic event and a tsunami. And I'm rereading the story going, I didn't know I knew any of this terminology. I mean, they're on a submarine and they're given orders, and the orders, wow, it's the orders, directions, protocols on the Cobra sub. These all seem real. Where did I get this? Where did I get this dialogue? Where did I get this terminology? And of course, I must have researched quite a bit to get everything, to my level of being right, to comic book level of sounding authentic. But I don't remember, and I don't. If I had to rewrite that story today, I'd probably have to relearn all of that stuff, because it's not like knowledge I used in my day-to-day life. So you just sort of let it fade away, like high school French, and you just forget all of it, no matter how much work you put into it. But yeah, I go back and I look, and I'm kind of surprised. Now, why am I surprised? Am I an idiot? Am I losing my mind? No, there's a scientific reason why you, me, anybody can write something, a postcard, a letter, a story, and then look at it years later and realize that, yes, I wrote this, but I don't understand how I wrote it. These are not words I normally use when I'm talking to people and everything else. There's a very good reason for that. And the reason is because we literally have different language centers in our brain. We don't have one single library. We don't have one single lexicon in our brain. We don't have one thesaurus we go to, one dictionary we go to. We have different ones for the different manners in which we communicate. There's a language center for things we hear. Which mine is very impaired. There's a language center for reading, which, how that happened. For the vast majority of human existence, we were illiterate. We had to create a language, and yet there is a language center for reading. There is a language center for writing. Again, man didn't come out of wherever, God's imagination, being able to read and write. And yet there's a different language center for writing and a different language center for speaking. So most people write more literate than they speak because, number one, they have more time to think about it. Number two, they're using an entirely different part of their brain. Me, I mostly use the wrong part of my brain for everything, but that's the reason why you can write something and then later not recognize it or not understand how you did it. So there you go. There endeth the lesson on that. John Bua, Mr. Longbox. When you write a script, do you let the plot dictate what will happen, or do you let the characters tell you how the story is going to happen? For instance, Superman had to forget that he could fly for him to die by Doomsday hand for that story to work. Had Superman acted normally, he would have grabbed Doomsday and flew off into space and battled him there, or even just tossed him away. But then there would have been no event. I think John's working out some issues here. Like all of us geeks, we run across a story where we have a problem with and we can't let it go. And then this is John's bugaboo. Superman should have been able to save himself and the world. So John continues. So do you come up with a plot and move your characters along to serve the plot, or do you have a plot and let the characters behave as they would and ruin your plot, making a wreck of your plans? Yeah, I mean, if you listen to these videos, my philosophy on this stuff is if you're writing a recurring character, if you're writing Nightwing or, you Ms. Marvel or whatever the heck it is you're writing, come up with a good story first and then insert the character into it. Now, once you come up with your plot and you insert the character into it, the plot's going to change. Because if you have a story, say there's a loved one missing, and your character is Batman, he's going to do detective work. If your character is Conan, he's going to kill everyone until somebody finally tells him where the loved one is. So, if it's the Punisher, he's going to make a whole bunch of enemies as he searches for the missing loved one, and bring all kinds of hell down on himself. Yes, the character can change the plot, but you got to come up with a plot first, and then insert the character, because story is really everything. I mean, yes, we love these characters, we love Spider-Man, but we just don't want to read about Spider-Man being Spider-Man. Flying around being cool and fighting criminals and having, witty repartee and all the rest. We don't want to read that. We want challenges, and we want problems and obstacles for him to solve, and we want to bring out his character through the travails that he suffers. And I'm a big fan of the deconstructed plot line. Also, you don't want your characters changing to satisfy the plot. The plot's got to change for the character. But remember, plot first. Character driven is bullshit. Character driven is lazy writing. I'm just going to have this guy, do whatever he does and blah blah blah, and everything's driven by whatever, his childhood trauma, as you see in 90% of like Netflix fare. Every decision the man or woman in the lead makes is based on some horrible thing that happened to them in the past. And it's like, oh my God, put me to sleep. So you don't want your character suddenly becoming stupid because that's going to serve your plot line. You want to make sure that, they remain consistent and true. I mean, Batman's not suddenly going to become, forget about the importance of fingerprints, things like that. Because that's just lazy writing as well. Now, not to say that your characters should be infallible. I mean, Levon Cade, like Frank Castle, makes all of his own problems for himself. I mean, he runs around like a bull in a china shop. He famously, if you read the books anyway, says he's not a detective. He's not an investigator. And to contrast that, I have actual investigators in the story, and I show their, procedures and what they have to do and the work they have to put in. And Levon doesn't put any of that in. He just, like Conan, looks for someone to, give a hard time to get the information that he desires. He'll shoot his way out of a room rather than reason his way out of it. Because that's just the way he reacts to things. He's not going to wait around to see what happens next. So he creates his own deconstructed plot lines. Not to say he's a moron like a teenager in a slasher film, but this is just the way he operates. And so, yes, he affects plots, but I've got to come up with the MacGuffin. I mean, what is the challenge for him? Is it a child sex ring? Is it a bunch of people cooking meth in the woods? What is it? Is it he has to return to Iraq because of a promise he made to a friend that he made there? Whatever. And then, of course, things fall apart as it goes along, and he has to react to those things, and it brings out his character. We find out, he's a man of honor, he's a man of courage, and resolve, and all the rest of it, and that all comes out due to the challenges. So yeah, it's a little bit of both, but plot, it's 80% plot. If you don't have a good story, don't start writing a story. Got to have something figured out. Not a whole lot, just have to have something figured out. A shark comes to town during summer vacation, starts eating people. That's enough. Run with that. Run with that. Hey, I have more to say, but before I say any of it, BrunoBookstore@gmail.com. BrunoBookstore@gmail.com is the place you want to go to drop your questions, like the fine folks have already done this morning. Now, Eli Zimmerman asks, have you ever before or would you ever plan in the future to make your own answer to Captain America? I assume you would recreate a largely different origin and such, but I think you would be a terrific writer for Cap. Also, do you have a favorite run of the character? Yeah, I don't really want to make a Cap light or a faux Cap. I think Captain America, of all those patriotic characters that were created, I think he's the most nuanced and the coolest. Maybe that's me from a perspective of a 10-year-old. I thought Cap was the best. It was a real race in my mind who was cooler in comics, Captain America or Batman. But I don't, I wouldn't want to write it would just come off as a pastiche. For some reason, Cap's earnestness and all the rest of it, it's hard to replicate without making it seem like parody or satire. Cap isn't parody or satire because he's got such a history and we've come to know him as comic fans. We accept it. Even when he says stuff that's corny, we accept it, and sometimes even moved by it. I mean, Stan wrote some really awesome soliloquies for Cap about faith and country. And it's like, wow, this guy really is into this. This guy is earnest. This guy, you can believe this guy. And that's hard to, it's like making a faux Batman. It just comes off, second rate. Would I love to write some Cap? Yeah, I probably would have at one time liked to write some Cap. I can't imagine doing it now because the atmosphere, the way things are, and I'm not going to create a Cap of my own to try to scratch that itch because it wouldn't be the same. I'd be trying to create my own Fantastic Four. It's just not going to work. It's not the same for me or for you. Favorite runs, when he got his own monthly and it was Kirby and it led into that Steranko arc, that amazing Steranko arc. That's probably my favorite run because it's got everything. It's got Red Skull, a lot of Red Skull, and he has that Red Skull has that island that he traps Cap on with those, it's like this murder squad of like all new, like really evil guys that Kirby came up with. And it's generally, except for obviously the Steranko arc, it's very Kirby driven. And I'm always a favorite of that. Plus, we get the last Sleeper, the Sleeper story in Tales of Suspense. Man, that was a great story. And we get the wrap up, the fourth Sleeper, who he did not disappoint, or it did not disappoint. So yeah, good stuff. Probably my favorite run. But then later on, we hit this like little golden era for like maybe 9 or 10 months. Johnny Romita comes on the book, and he's later joined by Gil Kane with Romita inking. And there's a lot of Shield action with Cap and the Falcon and Nick Fury and Sharon Carter. And again, the Red Skull shows up, not to spoil things for you. And this is just an awesome run. The art is amazing. It's like full bore. Everything you'd want in a Cap story is here. Like crazy action, and gorgeous artwork. And I really like this run as well. Obviously not as much as the Kirby run because Kirby's hard to top in my mind. But this one's worth looking. I guess it's been collected in an omnibus. How many Cap omnibuses are there? It might even be on my shelf. But I think I still have the original comics I bought off the newsstand from this run. But I really dug it. And this is when the comics went from 15 cents to 25 cents to 20 cents. That was all over the map. It's a crazy time for a comic fan. Gentle Savage, we haven't had a question from you in a while. Here goes Gentle Savage with his query. When it comes to all characters, superhero duos, and superhero teams you've written and created, are there any whose character dynamics and relationships are the most fun to write or that you enjoy writing the most. For example, Batman and Robin, Punisher and Microchip, Joe Frankenstein, Frankenstein's Monster, etc. My favorite was always Robin and Alfred. Tim Drake, Robin. Whenever these two basically had to, well, they were always talking about Bruce because, Alfred, long-suffering Alfred, with Bruce's wild behavior and crazy ideas and all the rest of it. And Alfred's been there as steady companion all this time. And Tim Drake, who's just entering the field as a sidekick, and Alfred feels like he has to watch over because he has to think of the things that Bruce isn't going to think about. He really sees himself after the death of Jason Todd as almost as Tim Drake's true guardian, even though Tim Drake's dad is still alive. But in his role as a superhero sidekick, a masked vigilante in training, Alfred is very cognizant of a duty to look out for Tim, not to, shelter him or any of the rest of it. And out of this, in my mind, and what happened was they built a relationship where Tim Drake was completely open to Alfred's advice and tutelage and guidance. And also, the two grew closer because they were the two closest people to Bruce. They were Bruce's family. And they were both very cognizant. And so both of them together are like looking out for Bruce. And early on in my Batman work, I wrote a scene, it's still one of my favorites, where of things I've written, one of those, I got to pat myself on the back, or, maybe nobody else liked it, but I liked it. I thought I achieved something here, was the scene where Electrocutioner literally kills Batman. And then Robin forces the Electrocutioner to basically give Batman another shock to bring his heart back in line. And then back in the Batcave, of course, Bruce is ready to, suit up and go back out. And Tim's warning against that. No, you need a few days rest. You died. And he says, well, I wasn't technically dead. And Tim continues to say, no, you just insist. You can't go out again tonight. And Alfred says to Tim, because he's been here before, he says, you're arguing with a man who made a distinction between clinical and biological death. And the story grew out of, if you wonder what inspired that scene, it grew out of my training in CPR, and I was a CPR instructor at an insurance company. And the difference between biological and clinical death is one, you're dead, and the other one, you got a chance. And here's Batman saying, no difference. I'm going out tonight. And I thought that scene, early on, for me, crystallized in my mind the relationship between Alfred and Tim Drake. And I look forward every time I had an opportunity to write those characters together. And then, of course, in Robin Year One, Scott Beatty and I had a lot of fun with the same relationship between Alfred and Dick Grayson, which was a different relationship because Dick was a little bit more reckless, a little bit more of a natural than Tim Drake, but still this connection between the two and their relationship to Bruce Wayne and Batman. So that'll still stand as my favorite interaction. Punisher and Microchip, for me, the Punisher and Microchip relationship defines the Punisher. We learn more about Frank Castle, because you never learn anything about Frank Castle from Frank Castle, but we learn more about Frank Castle from how he treats Microchip. And this isn't me. This isn't me doing this. To me, this is all Mike Baron. Mike Baron wrote an issue, and I've talked about it before in other videos. I don't know what issue number. Maybe somebody remembers. He wrote an issue that I liked the Punisher, and I liked what everyone had done, and I loved what Mike was doing. But then Mike basically showed all of us the way. He really got down to the heart of it. He really got down to square one, 101. This is who Frank Castle is. And in this issue, Frank is urgently needs help from his cadre of people that occasionally would help him, including Microchip. And in each instance, they let him down. They can't do what he wants or find what he wants or whatever. And he says, then what good are you to me? And then we get down to Microchip, and Microchip cannot give Frank what he wants. And he says, what good are you to me? And I'm like, oh my, that, what a cold son of a bitch this guy is. And a light went off in my head. I said, yeah, Mike nailed it. That's who the Punisher is. Nothing matters. No one matters. He's a dead man walking. He doesn't care about anybody. He just cares about the war. Just cares about the mission. And it really crystallized. And from that point on, to the point where I had Frank kill Microchip, I always kept that thing from Mike in mind. And the scenes were fun to write because Microchip would, in his own way, get back at Frank, making references that he knew Frank wouldn't understand or wasn't aware of. Microchip would get his little revenges against Frank Castle. They were like these meaningless little victories in his mind that he would have. And those scenes were always a challenge to write and a lot of fun to write. Because to my mind, from that point of that Mike Baron story on, Microchip knew his role. And even though he's willing to help Frank, because later on in revenge for his own son, Frank was an instrument of that revenge in Microchip's mind. But Microchip would never feel that same way. There would never be any camaraderie. There would never be any efforts at friendship. The rest, these guys were just two guys who shared a mission, but nothing else. Nothing else. It's like that coworker you never bonded with. And that's how I looked at it. All because of Mike. Thank you, Mike. You really, of all the people that did tremendous seminal work on the Punisher, and there were a lot of people that contributed to the character, Mike is like, okay, yeah, boom, that's it, baby. Currently, I'm writing The Horseman, and I like the Horseman's relationship with his sister-in-law. If you've read the series, Hector lives with his sister-in-law and his nephew, and feels responsible to them, and just have a normal suburban life. They're living in a 3-bedroom in a not so great neighborhood, and feels responsible toward her, and but he's always testing her, and she's always coming back at him, and I really love writing their scenes together, where she's trying to tell him freaking grow up. Running around in a mask, you're gonna get killed some night. Then where are we? I just love writing those scenes, and then his comebacks, and then Danny, the nephew, getting involved. Those scenes just all work for me. Another couple of people I liked writing when I was on The Simpsons. My favorite character to write was Lisa. I didn't know that going in, but it turned out she was my favorite character because she's kind of the heart of the show. Lisa's the only character who's earnest. I never agree with what she's earnest about, and I would have lots and lots of fun poking fun at the things that Lisa cared about and found important, to the point where almost every time I really tried to go a little further with that, I got slapped down. I mean, some of my best jokes were about Lisa and never made it into the comic. But I liked that the scenes between her and Homer. Some of my favorite Homer comebacks, are inspired by what Lisa said, something Lisa said. And one of my favorites was Homer makes a reference to midgets. Of course, Lisa says, they prefer little people, in quotes. And Homer's response is, of course they do, honey. They're midgets. That's one of my favorite. That's one of the lines I'm most proud of. And I'm not sure it's even in a comic. It might have gotten cut. But there was another time I had a Lisa scene that Homer wasn't in it, where the Simpsons are in South America, and Lisa gets lost in the Amazon, and she comes across people cutting a road, workers cutting a road, and she starts lecturing them on the rainforest. They're destroying the rainforest, and all these, all this, environmental. She's a little Greta Thunberg lecturing these workers, standing around her with machetes and their bulldozers and the rest of it, and telling them to stop because they're destroying the environment. And as she's speaking, we can see behind her all of the trees they've cut down. Like, it looks like Kansas. You can see all the way to the horizon. And as she's speaking, the jungle grows back. Until in the final panel, the whole background is just filled with jungle. It's completely grown back in the time she was talking. And they cut that. They wouldn't let me do that. Oh, but Lisa and Homer, I found it touching. She's really the heart of The Simpsons. And her love for her father, despite the fact that he's a blithering idiot, is one of the touchstones of the series, I think, that really make it work. It's why it's been around for 30-odd seasons, is because as silly and dopey and satirical as the show is, it's not cynical, and it's or at least it tempers its cynicism with a degree of heart. There's an emotional base to these silly characters, and that's why it's still around. There has to be an element of pathos. There has to be an element of heart to something to make it last. Look at all the situation comedies that lasted, more than 3 or 4 seasons. The classic ones, they all had this. They all had heart. They all had a little bit of pathos, because that puts the comedy into relief. It's not just a silly, jokey show. We actually care what happens. Jason Williams. I work for a model train manufacturer. When you are building worlds and environments, I'm sure there have been times when you've researched trains for a story. Have you ever written a story where a train or train station was the main focus? If so, I'd like to share that with some budding comic book fans I work with. First of all, it's really cool working for a model train manufacturer. That is cool. We had a train platform when I was a kid. My dad built it. We had an HO train platform. And it was a period platform. He had this little HO thing called the General, and it was like a Wild West train. And I built a little Wild West town, and fun stuff. I veered off into the area of toy soldiers myself, which I still collect and I still paint. So I'm with you, brother. And toy soldier people and train people buy a lot of the same stuff for building scenics and dioramas and things like that. So we are brothers at heart. But that's cool. That is cool. So just a whole different world of geekiness. Train people. It's funny, but all of my Western comics have trains in it. I just love Western trains. Stories about the railroad during the Western era, going back obviously to my train platform as a child. I just find that stuff cool. So my Punisher Western, drawn by Mr. John Buscema, has a lot of train elements in it, as does my Good, the Bad, and the Ugly story, Man with No Name series, and my Lone Ranger story, which is called Snake of Iron, which is a reference to a train. So obviously these all have trains in them. And I just dug that whole idea. And then Transformers Hearts of Steel, which takes place in the 1900s and features John Henry, the steel driving man, features a lot of train stuff. There's a, I was never a Transformers fan, but I had to write the Transformer. God bless you, Transformer fans. You're the most loyal fans in the world. And I did my absolute best. And I think Optimus Prime is this main engine, or it might be the bad guy, Decepticon guy. I can't remember. But there's a lot of trains in Hearts of Steel. So check that out. So Jason Williams again, twin spin, for which I didn't give you a twin spin, but it's in the mail. Twin spin. I advertised to train enthusiasts if I can get something wrong when talking about the locomotive, those who know are quick to correct me. Have you ever made a mistake regarding a character's pre-established lore, which a fan educated you on the mistake? Well, I get corrected here all the time because I say stuff. I get names wrong. People go, Chuck, you idiot. They never say that, but I just figure it's implied. That was issue, 139, not issue 120. That was Mickey Mouse, not Mickey Rourke. What are you talking about? But yeah, I mean, I've faced the wrath for, supposedly getting something wrong. So a lot of times I just did it my way, but I've gotten some grief for that. This and that. I remember once I mixed up tachyons and neutrinos. They're both weird physical elements. They're for weird things. Neutrinos are weird. Tachyons are weird. And I mixed the two up. And I'm sorry. I'm still apologizing. This is a long time ago that I mixed them up in a story, and I still heard about it. And of course, early on in the computer age, which to my mind, nobody knew how to write about it. I wasn't a computer guy. I didn't know all the lingo. Most of us didn't know all the lingo. I was just making up phraseology and terminology and jargon, and I still get grief about that. But as far as getting characters wrong, yeah, I mean, you're going to get, he would never do that. And it's like, well, yeah, he would, So it depends on your point of view on that character. I remember early on when I was working with Graham Nolan on Batman, and to my mind, Batman, the Waynes were Protestant. And Graham said, no, to my mind, they're Catholic. Now, both of us were raised Catholic, so there's not a predetermined prejudice there. I just thought the Waynes were really wealthy. They were old money. There was no old money Catholics. There was old money Protestants. And I just assumed from there. But then Graham convinced me. Well, he gave me no choice. Didn't really convince me. He just browbeat me until I went, okay. He's Catholic. So, there is a lot of discussion, background. I spoke last week about Chris Duffy on SpongeBob. If I would, to his mind, get something wrong, Chris was really good at explaining why I got it wrong. It wasn't just a predetermined prejudice or whatever. It was just like, no, there's something, you don't understand this about this character. And we had lots of discussions on just how stupid Patrick is. But mostly our discussions were about SpongeBob. And finally, Chris said, look, whenever in doubt, lean into his emotionality. He's going to overreact to everything. And that really was that was as good a guideline to SpongeBob as Mike Barron's story was to the heart of Frank Castle. So, but yeah, I mean, but I generally don't read a lot of comments. I know on G.I. Joe I probably got a lot of grief, but I never read the comments. IDW was always, yeah, you should read the comments. The fans would love to hear from you. And I'm like, no, I am not opening those floodgates. Because we're talking about a comic book based on a childhood toy, not even based on a comic book. I mean, I'm going to be battling with these guys, these 40-year-old guys, and their memories of playing in the dirt with their G.I. Joes. I mean, attributes and character details and stuff that weren't even in the comics that these guys added and are cemented in their mind from playing soldier. So no, I never went near those comments because I knew, once I enter that arena, then okay, now I'm a target. No, I'm just going to stay. I'm going to stay in my little room and just make stuff up. Paul Manoia asks, I recently rewatched Raiders of the Lost Ark. Can't believe how it's a nearly perfect film. Are there any other adventure movies in the Pulp serial vein you can recommend? The Mummy, 1999, comes close, but other than that, I can't think of any others. Are there any comics that deliver the same feel? Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why Raiders of the Lost Ark is a perfect film, and it's because Steven Spielberg worked so hard on it. In interviews over and over again, he said that he never worked harder on a movie than he did on Raiders of the Lost Ark. Now, did Spielberg work on it really hard because he was dedicated to the project or whatever? No, he was in a career slump. He had, put out a couple of bombs, like majorly huge bombs. And every time he tried to come back, the next movie either was a bomb or underperformed. So he was in a career, not lull, he was in a career doom spiral where if he didn't have another hit, he was going to have to go back to, directing episodes of Family Ties or something, because his career was going to be over. He was box office poison. And George Lucas hired him to direct Raiders of the Lost Ark, and Spielberg realized, I got to make this as good as I can. And he really put the work in. Now, you were going to say, Chuck, why doesn't he always put the same work in? I don't know. Same reason I don't know why George R.R. Martin doesn't finish his work. You would think, after the huge success of Raiders, that he would have gone, man, I'm going to do this on whatever this process was, I'm going to replicate it on everything I work on. But I agree, Raiders is perfect. To me, it's the only Indiana Jones movie. The sequels are so inferior to this. They never come up to this level again because Spielberg didn't work as hard on them. And if you read about, I don't mean to go on about Spielberg, but it's my show, and I'd never miss an opportunity to do so. Temple of Doom. Temple of Doom's a mess. It's an absolute mess. My wife and I rewatched it recently, and it's like, wow, this is the sloppiest filmmaking. And so it prompted me to do some reading. And they said, people on the set said that Spielberg was not interested. It was a cash grab. It was a paycheck. Wasn't interested. Was often absent. Would set up scenes and just leave because he was busy preparing some other thing he wanted to do, whatever that was, whatever his next movie was. He was more involved with that than Temple of Doom. And it shows. And Last Crusade is a little better, but not a whole lot better. I think those movies are a mess. You can argue with me all you want, but you're wrong. The Phantom movie, I thought, really very, very pulpy. Sky pirates and all the rest of it. And it was a proper homage to the comic strip as it existed. And I thought everybody in it was good. But Treat Williams as the villain, I thought, man, this guy really got it. He really got it. He was just grandiose. It was like his performance had been transplanted from the 1930s. This sort of like, Jack Holt, Brian Dunleavy performance. I mean, he understood the material. He knew what movie he was in. And I thought that was key. But all the pulp elements you could possibly want, including Sky Pirates and then regular pirates. That was cool stuff. And it's worth rewatching. And it's got some great stunts and some great setups, a la Raiders of the Lost Ark. Another one, there's been a recent trilogy of Diabolique series. Diabolique is an Italian comic book character. He's the villain. He's a mastermind. He's the greatest criminal in the world. And they're very pulpy. Now, they're not fast-moving movie serial kind of stuff like Raiders and the Phantom were, but they're very pulpy in their approach to the material, to the point where the cities that he operates out of are made up. The country he's in is made up. It's very much, there's not a fantasy element, but there's an element of the fantastic to the series, and all three movies are worth watching. Good stuff, beautifully filmed. Jackie Chan's Armor of God movies, which I just found out he made a third one not that long ago. I'll have to check that out. Very much inspired by Raiders of the Lost Ark, but they get the Jackie Chan touch. He's an archaeologist or treasure hunter, and that's how he makes his living. And I find them very pulpy. There's another character, Hong Kong or Chinese character called Wise Li, and there's various movies of him. There's one called The Legend of Wise Li, that very, very pulpy. There's an awesome, one of my favorite action sequences of all, It's a chase and fight across rooftops of a city up in the Himalayas, and they're running across these clay tile rooftops, and that's got some real good stuff in it. But it's super super pulpy. Now, if you want to go back a ways, the Mr. Moto movies are a lot of times people hear about the Mr. Moto movies starring Peter Lorre and they think, oh, it's just a Japanese version of Charlie Chan. It's not. He's not a detective. He's a world adventurer. And he's often involved with archaeological finds and pirates and things like that. And he's also violent. I mean, Peter Lorre, you never thought of Peter Lorre as a badass, but in this movie, he's a badass. He's an expert at jiu-jitsu, and he'll shoot you just for looking at him funny. He's got no problem gunning down a room full of bad guys or stabbing bad guys to death. And what the character is, he's just sort of this man of mystery. He's just this world adventurer, and he's always on the side of good, but he does what others will not do. And he's kind of infamous in his own circle. Now, one of them is like Charlie Chan because when Warner Olin died, the original Charlie Chan, they had this script lying around, and they stuck. They rewrote it for Mr. Moto to the point where even number one Key Luca's number one son shows up in the movie. That's probably more trivia than you wanted, but again, it's my show. But these are real pulpy, and they're worth checking out. They're generally just a little over an hour long, and they're paced like a bullet. And they've got everything that you'd want in a pulp story, humor and action and violence and mystery and weird villains and all the rest of it. And Peter Lorre's fantastic. You'll see Peter Lorre in a whole different light. Because usually we see him as the, sniveling coward or weirdo or whatever. But in here, man, he is in charge. And the series only ended, of course, because of Pearl Harbor. Nobody wanted to go see a movie about a Japanese adventurer. They didn't want to go see a movie about any Japanese people unless they were being bayoneted to death for a few years. But, that's the problem. And, of course, the series never came back after the war because it didn't. Speaking of pulp, and I know you talked about pulp comics, but all comics are pulp. They're all pulp. They're all grand opera. So there's too many to name in the pulp genre. But speaking of pulp, Guns of Mars, which I referenced a little bit earlier, is out. It is out in Italian, French, and German as well. It's on Kindle now. Paper editions are coming soon. They promise me. But there is... Hold on, where is that? Well, we have kind words here said about Bob. No, not about Bob. Glenn Davis. Glenn Davis. He's a man of taste and distinction, and he liked it. And he correctly identified it as a spaghetti western on Mars. So, and it is available on audio, so you can listen to it. And it's an AI narration. I'm not going to fool you, but it's good. And the AI somehow got all the pronunciation of all the crazy words I made up. It got them right without any kind of guideline from me, which is weird and scary. Hey, there's one more thing. I know I did a commercial before the end, and most of you probably tuned out by now. But for those of you stuck around, I got just one more thing. I heard yesterday, as all of us did, the death of Sal Buscema, and comic book fans the world over, of course, were saddened by this news because Sal was, a mainstay for so many of us of a certain age. He basically was Marvel in the 70s. I can't remember a month where there weren't at least 2 Sal Buscema projects. I mean, he was a workhorse. He was the go-to guy. When the shit needed to get done, Sal Buscema did it. And a friend of mine who was a fine artist, illustrator type, this was back in the day. He gave Sal Buscema the highest praise I can imagine. He said that, look at this guy, look what this guy knows. And it's just right there on the page. And he goes, I always fantasized about being a comic book artist And he goes, but I could never learn what this guy knows. And what this guy knows is, just how much to put down on the paper so you can meet the deadline. And that was Sal Buscema's thing, man. He was there. He was there with good, solid, entertaining work every month. And he had his own fan base. Just talk to anybody who was a fan of the Defenders back then. Ask them about the Defenders, and I hope you brought lunch, because he had these dedicated fans for that book, and I was one of them. I read Defenders back in the day, and I really, really enjoyed it. It was kind of like the down market of Avengers, and that's what I liked about it. It was different. And I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, there were a lot of people in the industry who didn't give Sal the respect that he deserved. And, people whose names you would know. And I don't understand it, because, he was doing the work. He was bringing it. And the stuff was entertaining and fun. And he was obviously, enjoyed it. For his whole career, he lived in the shadow of Big John, his older brother, but never seemed to bother him. Every time I met him a couple of times, it's a super, super nice guy, super charming guy. And I got to work with him one time. I hate, I'm not really giving a eulogy here. I'm just remembering things about Sal just off the top of my head. But I hate eulogies where people just talk about themselves. He thought I was a genius, but I'll miss him and all the wonderful things he had to say about me. But I remember being at DC's offices and hearing that they had just let go 3 Marvel artists. They just summarily fired these guys. And it was Sal and Herb Trimpe, and I cannot remember the name of the third artist. And I said, hey, I want to work with those guys. And of course, they had come to DC. Where were you going to go? You get fired by Marvel. You take a little walk, go over to the DC offices. Hey, I got fired at Marvel. You got anything for me? And I said, man, I'd love to work with Sal. I'd love to work with Herb. I can't remember the third guy, but I wasn't as anxious to work with him. I can't remember who that was. And I said, man, give me something with Sal. And unbeknownst to me, Sal was there in the DC offices, and they offered him a Batman project. And he says, could I work with Chuck Dixon? And I, boy, was I honored. I was honored that he would ask for me. And I guess he knew me from, I'd worked a lot with his brother, John Buscema, would often ask at Marvel for scripts by me. Because it's just writing the kind of stuff he likes. Not that, hey, he's a genius. It's like, no, he writes the stuff I like to draw. Cowboys and trains, and, big, muscly guys beating each other up in sugarcane fields. But anyway, remembering Sal, just so much a part of my growing up. And so many other people. I know there's a lot of people out there, people I know are very, very sad today over this. But, he lived to just shy of his 90th birthday. I hope he was, in good health to the end. Apparently it was a heart attack. Maybe, we can pray that he didn't suffer. And pray for him now as he moves on to a better world. The big drawing table in the sky, where we're all going to go someday. Maybe not to the drawing table, but we're going. But Sal, Godspeed, man. You were one of the best, a true soldier of the genre. Hey, boy, I don't want to do this over pictures of Sal stuff, because that's just disrespectful. Subscribestar, if you want to join me at Subscribestar, $1, $5 subscriptions, and you get digital goodies, sometimes physical goodies. I'm sending out Civil War Adventures #1 to all of the Subscribestar members for $5 tier today. This week I'm sending stuff out, and you get advanced news. I sent out a package of like exclusive postcards recently, so there are some goodies, some tchotchkes that you get in exchange for helping me finance some of the self-financed creator-owned projects that I mentioned earlier in the video. So anyway, that is it for this week. Thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for liking. I hope I see all of you down the road.